We're back for another Surfer in Residence. My name is Marco. I'll be the host today in for Tammy Moniz. And big mahalo to everyone for this opportunity to sit down today with big wave rider Mark Mathews. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
How you like our little
studio? It doesn't get more
studio?
beautiful than this.
Right? I mean,
I've never in my life been in a studio this beautiful.
You made a career out of two things that terrify most people, right? Big wave riding, public speaking. So let's start at the beginning. Okay, I hear that as a child you were afraid of the ocean. So what exactly about it were you afraid of, and how did you get over that?
It's funny because like when I do public speaking and I show people footage or photos of what I've been doing for a living for the last 2 decades, surfing the world's biggest waves, they usually look at that footage and the photos and they're like, the only way you've been able to do that is you must be crazy, or like you're born with some sort of brain defect that stops you from feeling fear like everyone else does. And I have to explain to people that is not true at all. Like, I was terrified as a kid of the ocean. So much so, it's funny, the opening story that I tell in my keynote is actually from here in Waikiki, of me getting trapped out in the surf in like shoulder high waves, being absolutely petrified, and my mum having to come out on a boogie board and rescue me.
Nice.
And it's like, I was actually the most scared kid in my kind of friendship circle of the ocean. But I don't know what it was. It was just my desire to want a career from the sport of surfing that motivated me enough to overcome that fear. And then when I overcame that fear of surfing, that was kind of the first big fear that I overcame. And then it was like my brain became addicted to the feeling of overcoming a fear. And then from then, that kind of changed the course of my life.
Well, you talk about it in a very reasonable way where you say to conquer fear, you just have to want the result more than you're afraid of the process to get it. So what was it that you wanted a professional career? You wanted to be one of the players.
Exactly. You have to want the result enough, because the only way to deal with a fear or overcome a fear is like exposing yourself to that fear step by step by step by step. And then you gain the sort of skill set and the knowledge to master the environment that you're scared of. But that process can be terrifying itself. So I always figured you just got to want what's on the other side enough to put you through that sort of exposure process.
Right.
And when I was young, I grew up with a professional surfer down the road from me. His name was Kobe Abadan. And when I was like 14, 15, he just had the best life I could possibly imagine as a 14, 15-year-old. He was like driving the coolest cars, traveling around the world, had beautiful girlfriends. Like as a teenager, a young kid, was like, he had everything I wanted, and I love surfing. So I was like, I have to do this no matter what it takes.
Right on. And so what led you into big wave? Because that's a whole nother beast.
Unfortunately, I wasn't good enough to be a championship tour level surfer. I was never going to be a Kelly Slater or a John Florence. And I found that out quite early, probably like sort of 18, 19 years old. And at that point, I just started to surf a few bigger waves. And there was actually one trip that changed everything for me. It was for a Tracks surf magazine, Australian surf publication. And they invited me to surf a wave that broke off the bottom of Tasmania. And at the time, no one had shot this wave before, but the rumors of it were terrifying. It was like the biggest barreling wave that anyone had ever seen. And it was my first invite on a magazine shoot. So I was like, I couldn't turn it down. As much as I was too scared to go and surf the wave, I was like, okay, this is my only chance at a surf career here. I went on that trip, and from a few different factors that may be more motivated than I've probably ever been in my life, I surfed some of the biggest barreling waves that I'd ever surfed, but also in history. And the photos went all around the media. And off the back of that exposure, I got my first big surfing sponsorship. And that kind of gave me the roadmap. It was like, okay, I'm getting paid now to go travel around the world, find the biggest waves that kind of no one else wants to surf them, capture the content goes out into the media. Based on the marketing value of the media, you're going to get paid in bigger and bigger sponsors. So that was my roadmap.
What made you think that you could take control of your career that way? Because these are big machines. You know, you have production crews, there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of stuff that's not surfing.
Yeah, I thought that was always going to be my advantage, because there was a whole sort of business to the side of professional surfing that you needed to be good at in the world of big wave surfing, because it's all about creating content. It's kind of, if you go out there and surf a huge wave, and no one captures a photo of it, it's like no one knows that it actually happened.
Right.
So the whole thing is a content game. And I figured I can kind of outperform the more talented surfers out there if I got really good at the kind of business behind big wave surfing. And if I could get better than them at that, then I'm more valuable to the sponsors out there.
Sure.
And I can continue to live this dream life.
2016, when you had a terrible accident, your worst fear kind of came true. You had this horrible injury, but instead of retreating to heal, you threw yourself into an even more vulnerable situation and decided to film it all and just share it in the most like brutally open and honest way I can think of.
It was really difficult, actually. The injury that I suffered, I got smashed into a reef at a wave in Australia. The wave wasn't particularly huge, but the nickname of the wave was Killers. So it's one of those waves that comes out of really deep water, breaks on a really shallow rock bed or reef. So it's exponentially more powerful than your average wave. I had a really unlucky wipeout where the wave kind of picked me up. I got stuck in the lip, and then I got smashed into the reef. But when I got smashed into the reef, I just randomly caught my leg inside like a hole in the reef. And if you went and snorkeled over that reef on a flat day, there's not many holes in there. Like I was just so unlucky that I landed in that place. And then I dislocated my knee, end up being told that I would never surf again because I've got permanent nerve damage in my knee, so my foot doesn't work anymore. I tore the arteries in my leg. There was just one thing after the other. And I was stuck in hospital for a year. I went through sort of in and out of hospital for a year where I went through 6 or 7 different surgeries on my leg. I didn't want to film it, but I have one of my best friends is a movie producer.
Okay.
And I think he kind of explained to my wife, Brittany, while she was there taking care of me, it might be worth just filming a few things on your phone just in case.
Oh my goodness.
And then I'm so glad that she did because it made for a really cool movie in the end. And I still get messages from people today writing to me and just saying, I was going through a really bad time and I came across your movie and it really inspired me to get better. And when I get a message like that, I'm like, okay, all of that was worth it.
It's truly inspirational to anyone. If you haven't seen it, you have to check it out because you just absolute transparent. You're just so open in sharing this horrific moment with everybody. And there's so much to learn from it. Actually, and with all the physical operations and whatnot, actually you were developing rehab exercises for your mind too, for mental and emotional. Tell me about the flow of gratitude. That was one thing that I found really interesting.
Yeah, this one, like I didn't come up with this. I was really lucky. I had this chance encounter in hospital when I was, it was at a time when I was really down and out. Like I was told that this nerve damage in my leg was never going to heal.
Right.
I had a bunch of operations to try and fix it. It didn't work. And it means that I can't lift or move my foot. So it kind of was going to make surfing to any sort of high level impossible. So I'm down and out completely. I'm just giving up. And I just randomly get this message on Instagram, like a direct message. And it's from this young kid. His name's Jason. And he reaches out to me. He said, I read what happened to you on a surf media website, and I realized from the story that you're in Canberra Hospital, which is where I am. And he writes to me, I'm a big fan of yours. I'm actually here in Canberra Hospital too. Would you mind if I came up to meet you and maybe got a photo with you? And the crazy thing was I didn't even want to see the kid. Like I didn't want to see anyone at that point. I put my phone aside. It was actually my wife, Britt, who wrote back to Jason and thought I could do with the company. Mm-hmm. And then later on that afternoon, this kid, he gets wheeled into my hospital bedroom by his brother. He had a snowboarding accident not long before I hurt myself. And he was a complete quadriplegic, like as bad as it gets. At 18, 19 years old, just finished his trade, was traveling around the world, first trip on a holiday. Like the saddest thing you could ever see. And it was just like, when I first shook that kid's hand, looked at his smiling face, him sitting in there in his wheelchair and dealing with this. He was dealing with this situation that was a million times worse than mine. And he just had that much courage. And it kind of just shook the way I was thinking about what I was going through. Like totally shifted my perspective. Like I went from feeling angry, frustrated, full of pity for what I'm dealing with to all of a sudden like feeling like the luckiest person alive. I could have hit the reef any other way and been in the same situation as this poor kid. But I was lucky I landed on my feet. You know, like
All of a sudden you're lucky.
I could have looked at it like and I was looking at it like I was unlucky, and this just totally shifted my perspective. And the way I could explain it was what I felt was gratitude. Like I felt lucky. And that seemed to change the way my body was dealing with the injury, especially when my leg got really badly infected, like the bad wounds in my leg. And then when I noticed how that sort of helped the healing, I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like I just need to feel this emotion of gratitude. I feel this love.
Physical effects from the mental
Total physical
improvement.
effects just from a different state of mind.
Wow.
And it was really interesting. And I went online and kind of researched it. And, if you Google the science of gratitude, you find kind of hundreds of studies showing how that physical change or state of mind elicits an emotional reaction, and then the emotional reaction actually changes the way your body physiologically functions and benefits it. So from that point on, I was like, okay, I've got to do all this rehab, I've got to do all this physical rehab, but I'm going to just make it a point to feel that gratitude as consistently as I could throughout my rehab. And I wish I could say like I've been on a cloud of bliss and happiness ever since, and I never get angry or frustrated, but I'd be lying. I'm not. I'm kind of what's called like neurotic. So my brain is really good at looking at any given situation and just focusing on the negatives. Like my brain just sees negatives to avoid danger. That's just the way it processes. I'm not naturally optimistic. I'm naturally pessimistic, which is
You're very
which is
honest
crazy.
with yourself, though.
Yeah, but it meant that I had to like embed some techniques to kind of force my mind to go against its natural programming and
Interesting.
feel the gratitude more consistently. So I used a whole host of different techniques. But the best one that I kind of used, which is what I created the wave of gratitude from, was a gratitude text. So if you take out your phone right now and you send a text message of gratitude to someone in your life, could be kids, could be your partner, could be your parents, could be a client, a colleague, anyone. But you write a text message along the lines of, hey, this is kind of random, but I was just thinking, I'm really lucky to have you in my life.
Yeah.
I just wanted to reach out and let you know that. You know, if you write a message like that, you'll have that emotional reaction. Your nervous system switches. It goes into that parasympathetic state, which promotes healing. But the benefit is the person who receives a text like that, they have twice as strong a response. So they have that gratitude effect. And then usually they send a message back.
Right.
And then the crazy thing is the third person that's impacted is anyone who sees two people or anyone displaying gratitude, they have a emotional response of gratitude as well. So it's like, as you start sending texts like this, and for me it was like kind of over an 18-month period, it sort of just created waves of gratitude around all social circles. Yeah,
I love that even
that
the spectator gets a benefit.
Yeah, but it was such a profound effect on my life beyond surfing, because it's kind of it kind of benefited all my relationships, like personal ones, but also like business ones, and every opportunity that I've had beyond surfing as a profession in my world of speaking. A lot of those opportunities came from people I had sent text messages to. So, yeah, and now I'm just sold on the idea. So I kind of just, when I do keynote talks, my goal in life is to get people to send that text message to someone. That's my whole goal of my keynote. And I started doing that from kind of 18 months ago, and I'm up to, I think, 8,500 people send text messages out there. So I feel like there's a pretty big wave moving around.
That's a tsunami.
I'm gladly like kind of inspired a little bit. Yeah.
That's incredible. I love this like breakdown and scientific. You know, when you talk about fear, you have a real scientific analysis of it. Did you always have that, or did you focus more on breaking down fear after the injury, or was that sort of always your approach to it?
No, because I was so scared of surfing in the ocean and then going into professional surfing and then into big wave surfing, I had to figure out how to deal with fear in my own life.
Right.
And I searched high and low of how to do that. And I went through all the different sort of scientific evidence of how to deal with fear. And what I eventually came up with is that there's kind of no way around fear. The only way to deal with it is exposing yourself to what you're scared of, little by little, so that you build up those new skills, obtain that knowledge that you can master the environment. Like the clinical psychologists, they'll call that voluntary exposure therapy. So
Okay.
voluntarily choosing to expose yourself to what you're scared of. And that seems like still to this day, no, like of all the research they've done in the field of dealing with fear and stress and building resilience, that's the only way to actually have an impact.
Huh.
Yeah, the main powerful way. But then that process is difficult. So then it's like, okay, you're going to choose to do that. Well, here's a whole bunch of techniques to help you on your journey to getting through that and building up your experience. And so there's a whole host of like kind of cognitive techniques like breathing techniques, meditation, sort of neuro-linguistic programming. And then there's the support factors like surrounding yourself with people that are supportive of your journey. Like there's a whole bunch of things that you can do to help you on that journey. But that journey, exposing yourself to your fear, is the only way you will overcome a fear.
So that's what you were talking, the building the experience. I mean, there's footage of you wrestling divers on the bottom of a pool. I mean,
That's the version in big wave surfing. That's voluntary exposure therapy for surfing, and big wave surfing is having a, like you got to recreate the scariest moment
Right.
in surfing, which is when a huge 40, 50 foot wave holds you underwater and basically tries to drown you.
Right.
And the only way you can recreate that I've found that
Yeah.
that is kind of beneficial, close enough to it that it'll condition your brain to not panic in that moment, is I go out and find a free diver, so just someone
Yeah.
who can hold their breath way longer than what I can.
Right.
So the free diver, he can hold his breath for about 10 minutes. It's way longer than what I can.
Right. That's
And then,
incredible.
yeah, we'll swim down under the deep water pools below the Olympic diving boards. They're about probably 5 meters deep. And once we touch the bottom of the pool, it's like my job to get myself to the surface so I can breathe. It's the freediver's job to hold me underwater,
God.
basically till I pass out.
Right.
So we're fighting and wrestling at the bottom of the pool. I've got this fear instinct in me because I don't
Sure.
want to black out and I'm running out of breath, but I have to stay composed, manage to wrestle with him and get to the surface before I pass out. So
Right.
it's just recreating the situation little by little. And to this day, I've surfed the biggest waves all over the world. Still yet to come across a wave that will hold me underwater for even half as long as what that freediver holds me
Right,
underwater
right.
for. So
So you're
said-
truly prepared.
yeah, but it means that I can be out in the water. And now a switch goes off in my brain. When a huge wave holds me underwater, it's like my brain switches and I go into that relaxed, composed
Right.
mode because it's so built into me.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned, I thought it was really funny because it was just such a take it on the chin comment where you were saying that, you know, when the worst is about to happen, just relax and prepare for the punishment that's about to happen and find out what you're made of. I
Yeah,
thought that's what I thought.
exactly.
I was like, oh, this guy is hard as nails, man. Find out what you're made of.
It's only in those moments where you're way beyond your comfort zone that
Yeah.
you will find out what you're made of. And usually, the best thing is and this is for anyone who's listening to this, it's most likely true that you're made of way more than what you think you are.
Right.
Because until you're in that situation, you
That's
won't
true.
know.
Do you do a lot of visualization in general, or is this sort of an isolated trick?
Yeah, my version of visualization is as a motivational tool to get me to do the work, the training, the experience. So
Okay.
I want to think about what this career in big wave surfing or public speaking now is going to bring me. So what does that success look like, and why do I want it? And I create a really clear picture in my mind of that, and that will just basically motivate me to do the work, like do the underwater training with the free divers or the public speaking version of that underwater training, which is even more awkward for someone like me who's hyper introverted. So it's more visualization is a tool to motivate yourself to do the work, because without doing the work, no technique will help you in the moment of a scary, dangerous situation.
Right.
You have to do the work. So it's kind of motivating yourself to do the work.
So how'd you get into public speaking? Was there? I doubt there was some public speaker where you were like, "Oh, this guy's got it on. He's got the cars." And, I mean, how'd you transition into motivational speaking?
Well, it was a little bit like that. I was just really lucky. I had a sponsor when I was younger. I was probably about 25. It was a sunglass company, and the marketing manager of that company just came up to me one day, called me into his office, and he said to me, "Look, at the end of your surfing career, this is what you need to do. And it was because he had a best friend who was in the world of public speaking that had a background in mountain climbing. And when he said, I laughed openly in his face. I was like, I would never do that, because people don't realize it's like, up until I was 30 years old, I couldn't string a sentence together in front of a camera. Or when I was at school, I couldn't even read from a book without stuttering. Like,
Really?
It's just, the speaking thing is not natural to me. It might sound natural right now, but it's not. It's just that I've answered similar questions multiple times over and over and over and over and over again.
Experience.
I've been in this situation, and it's just that. It's experience. But I put off the public speaking as long as I could. But when I had this last bad injury, I kind of had no other choice. And that's a powerful thing when you have no other choice. It will propel you into a different aspect, different career. And that's what it did. I just took all my energy that I used in the world of big wave surfing and put it into public speaking, applied the exact same theories of dealing with fear and stress that I put into practice in the world of big wave surfing, and just applied them to the world of speaking. And that's basically find the experts who are the best at public speaking. Go to see them. If you can't afford to see them and get taught by them, then watch all their video clips, read all their books, and then start filming yourself with your phone, speaking out loud over and over and over and over again. And watch the masters do it, mimic how the masters do it, and then get up on stage little by little and do it. And now I speak all over the world. I probably get paid more in 1 year of speaking than I did my entire surfing career. So I'm really lucky in a lot of ways from getting kind of taught about this pathway from that sponsor that I had.
Something that you were talking about that really struck with me was that the only person you have to compare yourself to is to you, to your former self, the you today versus the you yesterday, which I think is really cool, because as we live, we're going to change, get to new skills, lose old skills. We're constantly changing, and this has a way to account for that. And where did you kind of come across that? Because we're always comparing ourselves to other people. The world is comparing us to other people all the time.
Yeah, that's like 101 in the motivational literature in psychology. The power of comparing yourself to who you were yesterday. It's not that you don't look at other people who are amazing at what you do and learn how they do it, but then you got to compare your progress, not necessarily to them, because you'll constantly find the people who are better than you, and that won't feel good.
Right.
It's just better to look at, how much better you get each week or each month. And when you do that, it's interesting, because your brain is so finely tuned to that. And because when your brain sees any level of progress towards something important, it creates more positive emotion. That's just how our brains function. So it's like, set the goal. This is what I want to be good at. This is the career that I want. Here's all the little tasks that I have to do day to day. Mundane tasks they can be, but they're going to lead me in that direction to that career. And each time you tick one of those tasks off, that's progress towards that goal. And then when you see yourself a little bit better, and sometimes you've got to force yourself to look at that, because we don't always like to give ourselves a pat on the back. Like, that's not a natural human thing to do either. Like, we're often more negatively geared than positively. So it's like you implement those things to pat yourself on the back, look at the progress that you've made, and then that just reinforces that motivational loop in what you're doing.
Interesting. And I'm always interested in like small changes that have great effect over long periods of time. You have any little hacks, daily hacks? I know there was habit stacking.
Oh, habit stacking is an awesome one. It's basically where you take positive lifestyle habits that you want to implement.
Okay.
They can be to do with anything. It might be to do with just all aspects of performance, whether it's physical, diet, exercise, sleep, whether it's to do with mental or learning a new skill or knowledge or whatever it is you want to learn or implement. You might want to start meditating or do yoga, or you might want to surf more. So it's like, here's the new positive lifestyle habit that I want to implement. And the quickest way to turn the new positive one into a habitual pattern is to tie it to a primary habit that you already have.
Okay.
And so your primary habits...
Like a mundane daily thing.
Yeah, just think about what you do day in, day out really consistently. You might wake up the same time in the morning, have your first cup of coffee.
Sure.
You might sit down for breakfast around the same time. You might have this moment where you commute to work, or you might have this moment where you sit down for lunch or exercise or watch TV in the afternoons. Like, in those moments, those primary habit moments, your brain's kind of a little bit on autopilot.
Yes.
And the wiring of what you're doing is really deeply ingrained into your brain. So you want to piggyback off that.
Got
so
it.
you want to take the new technique or whatever you want to implement habit,
Right.
and put it on top of the primary habit. So, like, for example, when I was practicing gratitude, I would like force myself to write out a bunch of things that I was grateful for in the mornings every time I had a cup of coffee. And I wouldn't let myself have the coffee until I'd been writing it down.
Nice.
And then over time, it becomes that. So now when I sit down and have a cup of coffee, that emotion, that gratitude emotion elicits without me writing it, because
Wow.
you ingrain it so much
Wow.
over time. And that's me kind of competing against that negative bias that I have in my brain, you know? So
Yeah.
it's kind of tying things to what you're already doing. If you don't have a goal or you're not progressing towards something valuable in your life, whether that's like, you know, this innate human drivers of shelter, food, in order to find a mate, have kids, and like the fundamentals of life. Like if that's all goes away, but you're just meditating to find the present moment, and that's enough, you know, like for us as humans, then why do you do anything?
Yeah.
Like, so why don't you just go and sit in a room and do absolutely nothing
Right.
and continue to meditate?
Right.
And I'd kind of challenge anyone to try and do that, because it would be impossible. You go stir crazy, mad,
I'm too restless.
You know? Yeah. For me now, public speaking, it's always nerve-wracking, but then now I get so much joy of getting people to send those messages, and because they often write back to me, and because they received a really nice reply from a loved one, and they're
Right.
like, look, I just wanted to let you know, look, this is what my wife sent back to me, this is what my kids sent back to me. And when I read that, I'm like, this feels so good. Like that's now when I get up on stage, I just think about that. That's all I want to get
Right.
people to do. So the fear slips away a little bit, because you're somewhat in service to the audience that you're going to speak to. Then it's less about you and what people think about you,
Right.
which kind of alleviates a lot of that stress.
That's part of what I love about doing interviews is I know that you're a public speaker. If I have a complete meltdown, I know you could just take the reins and take over for a moment.
Yeah, but now we're just talking to each other, like,
Yeah.
and the conversation gets interesting,
Yeah.
and everything sort of slips away. It's like you don't think about the
It
cameras
does. We
anymore.
got Diamond Head here.
Exactly,
The breeze is
yeah.
blowing. Ben Ipa had a beautiful comment that I love. He says, the surfing creates snapshots in your head that you'll never forget. And are there any images, any snapshots in your mind that you know are burned in there for the rest of your days?
Oh, there's a few amazing ones. There's my daughter just the other day, like probably 3 weeks ago, rode her first wave standing up,
Oh,
and
man.
like proper little wave all the way, and the smile on her face is burnt into my brain.
Awesome.
There's a bunch of surf ones. There's the first barrel that I got after my recovery from my knee injury, after thinking I would never surf properly again.
Right.
Stood inside a big barrel at Kirra on the Gold Coast of Australia, and it's clear as day what that looked like.
Right.
There's also a really scary one, was a big wipeout that I had at Jaws Piahi over in Maui. Is like the biggest wave that I ever paddled into, and I free fell down it, and I can see the drop of that wave clear as day. It's more like a nightmare though, that one.
That's crazy. Okay, and something that something you didn't think you could ever do that you did.
Oh, public speaking, by far.
Public speaking.
Yeah, public speaking is...
It's so funny because my wife is like, why do you ask people that? I'm like, people always have an immediate answer. They
Yeah.
know there's something there. And then something that you thought was going to be easy that actually kicked your butt that you never thought would be as difficult as it was.
When I try and rationalize my public speaking
Oh,
fear, it's
that's
like,
priceless.
this should be easy because
Right.
you do this, but fear doesn't work like
That
that.
is
It's just not, you
priceless.
can't rationalize it away. So.
Nothing's easy. Well, listen, I want to thank you for coming down and joining me on this beautiful day here at Surfers in Residence. If you're not familiar with his online podcast or your website, check it out. It's so inspirational. You could hire him for your next corporate event. You adapt 30-minute, 90-minute, whatever people need, and different topics as well. And mahalo to everyone for watching another episode of Surfers in Residence. If you like what you see, please be sure to hit that subscribe and like button, and then you can come and join us for future episodes. Mahalo for watching.